our team, by the way. So before I start, I just want to apologize because I'm a bit sick, so my throat is hurting, so I might cough. Sorry about that. So, hey everyone, my name is Andrii, and today we are going to talk about the observations and general ideas of testing in Flutter projects. Just brief information about me. I'm currently a middle automation testing engineer. I have worked for almost 7 years, and in GL Ukraine I was a test lead for 2 projects, backend and the web UI project. And right now I'm almost 5 months in the Dart and Flutter projects, and from my accomplishments I was architecturing and implementing most of the stuff which we have in our automation framework. So let me ask you guys if there are any testers in here. Okay, that's our team. Okay, so again we are going to talk about just general concepts, nothing in depth or at least in any depth, just something general. So the topics will be: is the Flutter project good for manual QA or even newcomers? What were my impressions of Dart coming from the Java world? What are the advantages and disadvantages from like testing perspective of Dart and Flutter, mostly Flutter, and our experience, which libraries we used and why, and basically so. So let's start with whether Flutter project is good for manual QAs and for newcomers. From my point of view, it is, because the applications are pretty responsive and easy to get, and because the project starts from the blank page, you have this opportunity to be involved into the whole project and learn it from scratch, and that's why it's pretty nice to come to the Dart or to the Flutter project right now, because it might be starting, and you will be from the very start. It's a unique experience and pretty good experience to have. It supports hot reload and hot restart, but from my point of view, it's mostly sorry about that. From my experience, the hot reload and hot restart features are mostly used by the developers, but they might come in handy sometimes even for the testers. For me, it was like 5% of the time I used it, but that's at least something. Also, the Dart and Flutter are skyrocketing right now in the popularity of the cross-platform frameworks, and that's also good for testers, because it means that there will be a lot of vacancies, a lot of positions available for testers, and there will be really low competition, so it's an easy way to get there. And the only one downside of all of that is if the manual QA decides to switch to automation, it might be harder than in like Java or Python world, and that will be like covered by the next topic of my impressions about the Dart after the Java background. So first of all, the syntax is a mix of everything, so the people from all over the programming world can find something similar to where they came from. For me, as Java guy, it was like super similar. I don't know why, but from the first day, from the first glance, I just knew how to write main and then just code the usual Java code and that's all. At first. There is a lot of syntax sugar, which is a good thing, but if you are not familiar with that, it could be a drag, it could be a bad thing for you, because you don't know how to read that, that's why you don't understand the code, you don't know how it works, and yada yada yada. Because the Dart is directly convertible to JavaScript, it was their requirement to be convertible to JavaScript. I think that they had to bring some downsides of JavaScript into the Dart, and that's why you can see something like some very weird stuff, and you, from the first glance you will be like, why did they do it like that? Well, my understanding is because of the JavaScript version. Yeah, getting used to anonymous functions and lambdas everywhere was a tricky thing, and for the person who didn't know them, it took some time to learn them and to get used to them, like really everywhere in the Dart code. And because automation testers need to take a look into the code of the application sometime, you might have some problems at first. But it gets much easier very fast. Yeah, lots of things seem familiar, but work a bit differently or completely differently. So for me, such examples were using mobs, using lists, and other data types, data structures coming from the Java world. So you have to adjust. You have to remember that. Anytime the Dart can strike you in the back in that area, so when you are switching from some other language, just remember about that. Because Dart lives for a really long time, it's a pretty old language, but it wasn't really popular for most of its life. It only became popular with the Flutter. The community is not very big. That's why you will never get full Stack Overflow mode. Okay. We had several issues, and we had to basically either solve them on our own or wait for like new Flutter release to get them fixed, because there was nothing on the internet to resolve them. And for like Java, for Python, you have the Stack Overflow, which has all the answers. Yeah, also regarding the documentation, when I was learning the Dart, I didn't find the documentation and the introductions really useful and really not useful, but well described, because it was more like a dictionary, what we have, but you have to get to learn it on your own. So it was mostly trial and error, just try and see what happens. And all of that stuff hits you from the very beginning of you starting to learn the Dart. So for programmers it might be not that big a problem, but for testers who are not into development as much, I mean into programming that much, who don't have that deep understanding of the programming languages, that could be, well, it could be uncomfortable at first, but then again it gets better. So yeah, now coming to Flutter for testers. The advantages are like, it's a brand new, it becomes very popular, so again, you have a low competition, the market starts to boom around it, and you have some positions, it's easier to get there. Companies basically wanna just get anyone, just convert to the Dart and Flutter, and we will hire you. Well, if you're worth at least something. Of course, again, there are hot reload and hot restart features which might be handy for testers, but not too much. It's pretty easy to grasp how to do basic stuff and how to run basic tests. It's really easy. It's like a 5-minute guide on their website. Again, the way that Flutter represents testing is that they say that they bring you the unit test framework, the widget test framework, and end-to-end tests, but we will discuss that a bit later. But yeah, you have an access to the widget tests where you can just run a separate widget and test all the inputs and outputs combinations, and that might be handy. Just I want to warn you that sometimes it's not the case, and widget, the UI on the widget gets all together and you cannot verify anything. So before you invest into that, try it out on the project, because it could be tricky. And yeah, if you are not bound to the real devices, if you are not bound to like a Bluetooth connection or something else like cellular data or whatever, so basically you can use emulators in your testing. You are free to go with the Docker or with some cloud, AWS, whatever farms suits you to make your testing run faster. Yeah, now comes the disadvantages. The first thing which struck me was the asynchrony. Testers are not the people who are very in need of asynchrony, because all we want to do is push that button and verify the result of that action and some basic activities like that. And we don't need asynchrony in there. Of course, there are rare cases where we could employ the asynchrony, like downloading some huge chunk of data from the website or from the database and stuff like that. But these are really, to my mind, these are really rare occasions. So most of the time, because the Dart is asynchronous and the Flutter driver, which drives all the test cases, they are written in really asynchronous style, is just a drag, which you have to deal with, just to live with. Flutter cannot interact with anything outside your application. That means that you cannot really turn on Wi-Fi or whatever you would like to change on your operating system. It's not supported at this time, and I'm not sure if they are planning to work on that. Of course, learning a new language, not everybody would want to do that when he changes the job or something like that. So I put it there. So for testers not to forget that if they are joining the Flutter project, they will have to learn a new language. Again, just as well as Dart, the same situation with the community. It's really tiny. It's much less than Dart community. So most of the time you will not find any solutions for your problems, because problems are pretty. The root cause of the problem usually is the good of the testing community, and sometimes it's pretty toxic. So the classic Stack Overflow example memes that you ask something and you get blamed for asking that, is still the case here. Yeah, the limited functionality of the Flutter driver, I understand that there are no testers here, so I will get a bit deeper here. We have a WebDriver protocol. The guys from WebDriver they did an awesome job, and they created a standard for testers for basic interactions. They started from browser, but everybody starts to implement this standard, this protocol. But it's not the case for the Flutter. There are a lot of interactions which are supported, but still there are some which are not supported, and you just have to deal with that. You have to test them manually, or think about some workarounds. A simple example of that: you have an input field. You can input some data there, but you cannot read what is the content of what you have just typed into there. Also, there are not a lot of different libraries which you already have in the Java or Python world, so you have to be ready to be able to implement something on your own, which could be a good thing, but we will talk about it a bit later. One of the biggest problems of testers on Flutter is that Flutter dev team currently works and does everything to involve more and more developers into Flutter, but they don't work on testers' life and on testers' problems. And there are tons of open issues on the GitHub related to testing, but they are addressed, but they are addressed in a way that, okay, we'll know about that, but there is no time for us to fix that right now, so sometime in the future. And yeah, when we come to Appium, I will elaborate a bit more about that. Yeah, there is no ability to run automated tests on the pre-installed application. I don't know if that's the case for native mobile and I mean iOS and Android mobile devices, and those technologies have never been there. But the fact that it's not possible makes me wonder, like, why. And basically you need a clean build, like a final build, which is already built, which will go to client if it passes the testing, but it's not possible here at the moment, so you will have to remember that. It's really hard to debug. When you have any exception code during the test, when you try to debug it, and when you hit the exact time when you get the exception, you get into internals of the Dart language, and there is no possibility to get out of there. So debugging is more like trying to guess what happened wrong there. So it's better to have some logging on your own to better understand what was happening with your test, or with your yeah, basically with your test. There are hard-coded parameters, and you have to take them into account. For example, Krzysztof was presenting the structure of the project, and there is another directory, that driver directory, and you cannot put it anywhere else. It has to be there, and you have to run your tests being in the root of the project. You will not be able to run anything from anywhere else, and that's a big question for me, why? So yeah, you have just to try it out and to remember that. Flutter's tutorial for testers, especially for integration tests, which are like the biggest, which are supposed to test your business logic and everything. The example there is basically a hello world, and then you have to build a pretty sophisticated framework, and going from the expertise of the hello world to the sophisticated framework, it's kind of big difference. So you have to invest quite some time and some efforts in order to get some better understanding of how to do this and that, and basically like that. And the built-in runner is real garbage when you need a configurable test suite, and basically you almost always need a configurable test suite. Like you need smoke tests, you need the whole regression, sometimes you need to descope the regression, and yada yada yada, and you need some way to manage that like painfully, and the built-in runner it doesn't support any of that, so that was like a surprise for me why they just didn't put just why did they put so less amount of effort into testing, because still they advertise that they provide end-to-end tests, but from the 5-month experience, they almost don't support it the good way. Just a second, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so I will not tell about our project because everybody has some project, and to be honest, testing in Flutter is doesn't differentiate. It's not that different from the other projects and other technologies. I know that it's a huge difference for developers, but for testers it's kind of the same. Just different language, different stuff, but basically you need to do the same. You need to tap, you need to verify, you need to yada yada yada. The key thing, which is the Flutter driver, it performs the basic interactions, tab, find something, find element. It comes from out of the box, and you will not be able to do anything without it. The Flutter Gherkin is an interesting library which provided us with the really useful test runner, which solved one of the biggest problems of the Flutter, and also it provided us with reporters, and also it provided us with the BDD approach, which our customer wanted to try out, so it was like a 100% score for our project. And the next one is Appium. Appium is a it's a leading framework in the mobile automation, test automation, and currently they are trying to get into Flutter 2, and they tried to do it from the first stable release of Flutter, but they have the open issues on the Flutter's GitHub, and they are not being addressed again. But I really hope that they will successfully overcome that, because Appium supports everything together, and for example, if they will succeed, then the projects which already exist, those products which already exist, and they want to move to Dart Flutter, the tests will be easily convertible. So you will not need to rewrite everything to Dart and Flutter. You will just use another implementation of the Appium driver, and that's it. And the biggest advantage of Appium is that it doesn't only perform all the actions on the application, it also can interact with the operating system, so you can do whatever you need. But yeah, currently it's in development or beta. I don't really know. They have two approaches how to do that, and they don't know yet with which to continue. And in the summary, I really think that Flutter is an interesting and rapidly developing framework. Um, and currently, big companies and those Alibaba Group, BMW and eBay, they were already committed like in July of this year. This was announced on the Flutter I/O in July. So probably somebody else get in. So yeah, the fact that such huge corporations get on board, it means that it's probably gonna work, because they don't just go as easy. They don't make such decisions as easy as those small projects. And due to it being you, you have a lot of constraints, but at the same time, it's super new, and everybody wants to try something new and to create something huge and to make something incredible. So that's a chance to do it and to get some expertise, to experiment, to share your experience, and to contribute into the community and make something great and get appreciated for that. So that also that was the reason why I came into this technology, and I think that it's a pretty great opportunity which might not be present for like a really long time. And to my personal opinion, Flutter might have started a new page in the world of cross-platform development. So if you are up for some challenge, you are more than welcome to join the team of testers on Flutter and to try out your skills. And thank you. Maybe any questions?
Yeah, I would like to ask you something. So, in general, what's your approach to external data sources in integration tests? Do you work it somehow with take data, or do you use real data sources?
Yeah, I deleted that slide because it was really boring and really long. Basically, you have Mockito here, and you can mark it using Mockito or using wiremark, getting the Java library here, just going from external process. But our approach was just stubbing. So we used the JSON files, which we feed it to the API calls, and that was a super bad approach, and don't use it. That's my message. Use a proper mock server, configure it properly, and it will be much better.
Yeah, and another question. On one of the pages, you wrote that Flutter has widget tests, which was advantage, but in the parentheses there was something like not always. Could you elaborate what was in mind?
Just a sec.
Not here? Not here?
Yeah.
What is that? Not always.
As I said, sometimes the widget testing doesn't work. The widget is not built properly on the widget test level. That's why you will not be able to utilize this level of testing. For example, in our project, on our product, we were able to use them, but for the same client on the different product, they have this mesh of UI data all together, just a pile of them, of UI elements, and that's it. And nobody knows why.